Chairman Bernanke, I assume you're familiar with two recent reports by Moody's Analytics and Goldman Sachs, which talked about the proposed House Republican budget. Their conclusion is that if passed without modification, there could be as much as a 2% decrease in the growth next year going forward, and as many as 700,000 jobs lost because of the contraction of spending at the federal level. Do you agree with that analysis?
If that's referring to a $60 billion cut, obviously that would be contractionary to some extent, but for our analysis doesn't give a number doesn't give a number that high.
Well, the proposed cut this year is $100 billion in the House. Mm-hmm. Is that what you use for your projection forward?
We are assuming 60 this year and 40 next year, which would be the 100 billion over the fiscal year, and we also assume a normal spend out. The way the impact is not immediate, but is spent out over time. The reduction is effective over time, and we get a I have to say a smaller impact in that. I'm not quite sure where that.
What is your impact?
Several tenths on GDP
and jobs.
I don't have that number, but it would be certainly much less than 700,000.
And that is I just want to understand what the assumed cut would be in this year, because some of the things we've heard in the House proposal, it's a $100 billion cut for this year.
This year.
Which would be $40 billion larger than you would, that you're using as a parameter?
Well, then I would multiply it, by one time, 2/3 greater. But I'm happy to send you our analysis center, but I frankly don't understand where 2% is an enormous effect. 2% of the GDP is 300 billion right there. So, assuming a multiplier of 1, 60 to 100 billion is not sufficient to get to that level, but it would of course have the effect of reducing growth on the margin. Certainly
it would have the effect of reducing growth, which would, again, the question is how much, which would be contradicting, or at least a countervailing force to your stimulus effect in QE2. Is that
to some extent? That's right, and that's why I have been trying to emphasize, and I know that this Congress will be looking at this, the need to think about the budget issue not as a current year issue, because obviously whatever can be done, 60 billion is not going to have much impact on the long run imbalances in our economy and the fiscal policy. I think it's much more effective both in terms of short-term effects on the economy, but also in terms of longer-term sustainability and confidence to address the budget deficits over at least a 5 to 10 year window, not simply within.
Well, I agree with
next
you.
Few quarters.
But the issue that confronts us is this year's budget and next year's budget. That's an issue du jour, literally.
Right.
My presumption is the last quarter GDP was originally estimated at about 3.2%, downgraded to about 2.8%. Is that your rough understanding, too?
That's what the Bureau of Economic Analysis said, yes.
And their conclusion was a lot of that was a result of contraction in spending at the state and local governments.
That's correct.
So I'm just wondering here, if we contract spending at the federal level, which has a ripple effect at the local level very quickly, because many of the programs that we support are really run by and delegated to and staffed by state and local employees, you don't anticipate a significant fall off in growth?
It would have a negative impact, but again, I think the 2%, I'd like to see their analysis. It just seems like a somewhat big number relative to the size of the cut.
But and you're, again, for the record, you're assuming in this year's budget a reduction of $60 billion from the president's proposal.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And we've heard from the Republican side, the House side, $100 billion. So there's a $40 billion which you have not factored into your estimates.
Is that $100 billion in the calendar year 2011?
That's it's the fiscal year 2011, I believe.
Well, that goes into next year, next calendar year.
June
So-
30th.
So talking about
Excuse me.
talking about calendar year 2011.
No, we're talking fiscal.
Okay. Well, in terms of growth numbers, there would be an effect this year of a tenth or two, and then there would be an additional effect in 2012, assuming that those cuts continued, and also that the effects of them spread out over time beyond the fiscal year itself.